Hi everyone, this is Counseling 3010. This lecture is the Strunk and White, the Elements of Style, as well as APA Purdue OWL, talking about the elementary rules of usage. So basically what this lecture is just a really quick introduction or review about basic grammar when it comes to writing for classes. All right, so let's start off with the singular possessive. So singular possessive basically means that it's being owned by one person. Singular meaning one person, possessive meaning you own it, right? So form of possessive singular of nouns is by adding an apostrophe s. For example, Alexis's friend, right? So it would be Alexis ends with an s, but you still would add an apostrophe s, friend. So that means that Alexis has a friend, right? Singular person Alexis has a friend or possesses a friend. Another one is Burns. So Burns is a famous poet. So his last name ends with an S. So you would still add an apostrophe S. So it's Burns's poems. Okay. So Burns is one person, even though the last name has an S in it, and poems, which is the things that he possesses. And then the last example here is the student's kindness. So student doesn't have an S at the end. So all you do is just add that apostrophe S, just typically, and it's called the student's kindness. Okay. If it sounds kind of funny, such as Isis's temple, you can replace it, reword it basically, to the temple of Isis. That way the apostrophe S doesn't get really confusing and it'll be Isis's temple. Okay. One thing also is that depending on where you learn your grammar, if there is an S at the end of the word, sometimes people don't put the apostrophe S. They just put an apostrophe. But that gets a little confusing for some people. This is the typical one that the Elements of Style, which is our textbook, as well as the APA promotes. All right, pronoun possessive. So pronouns are basically replacing a noun. So instead of saying John, you're going to say he. He is considered a pronoun. Okay? He, she, it, theirs, yours, all those are considered pronoun because it replaces the person's name, typically. Okay? So if you do not need to have an apostrophe S. So hers, basically means that it belongs to this one person. You do not need it. So it's H-E-R-S, or its, I-T-S. Theirs, T-H-E-I-R-S. Yours, Y-O-U-R-S. And ours, O-U-R-S. So in this, again, just to emphasize, possessive pronouns basically no apostrophe even though you're talking about possessing something. So the example sentence here is, it's a wise dog that scratches its own fleas. Okay, so that last one, its own fleas, is saying that it belongs to that dog, right? So no apostrophe. The beginning of the sentence says it's with an apostrophe. That is called a contraction, and we will talk about that later. So technically that one is, it is a wise dog that scratches its own fleas. Indefinite pronouns. So pronouns that do not refer to a specific person. So it could be anyone. This is more speaking in general. Okay. It does have an apostrophe. So one's rights. One is just anyone, right? So that means it's indefinite. It doesn't refer to one specific person. It refers to every person. So it's one's right. So it's O-N-E apostrophe S, rights. Somebody else's umbrella. So else, somebody else is, it could be anyone, right? We don't know who it is that this person, this umbrella belongs to. So we're going to use an apostrophe S. Contractions, we talked a little bit about that earlier, is a word made by shortening and combining two words. So can't, which is probably very common for you, is a contraction or basically shortening of the word cannot. Don't is do not, and I've is I have, right? It's is it is. So in the sentence that we talked about in the previous slide, it says, it's a wise dog that scratches its own fleas. So in the beginning part, it's really talking about it is, okay? Here is a professional tip for you as students. Do not use contractions in your papers. We prefer to see you use the actual words out loud because sometimes it looks like it's slang almost, and academic papers tend to not want to focus on slang-ish type thing. It's like a shortcut. Do you see it? You do, but I'm gonna let you know, like, if you can start practicing in your papers, no contractions in your academic papers, great. You know, when you're texting your friends or whatever, totally do whatever you want to do, abbreviate whatever you need, but in academic papers, we encourage you to just spell everything out. Commas, serial comma or Oxford comma. So what this is all about is how many commas do you add in a list? Usually the list has three things. Typically, you know, it's very common to see three things in a list, right? So a serial comma or an Oxford comma basically means we're going to add one after everything so that we know for sure that these three things are separate things, okay? So red, white, and blue. So it's red, comma, white, comma, and blue. So that comma separates those three things, okay? Here's another example: gold, comma, silver, comma, and copper. And then here's a final sentence here is, he opened the letter, comma, read it, comma, and made a note of its contents. Okay, so you might not necessarily see the Oxford comma. However, that is the one that is preferred when it comes to academic writing in psychology. Okay, and the reason why is, let's take the first example: red, comma, white, comma, and blue. So in your head, you should probably visualize a thing that is red, a thing that is white, and a thing that is blue. However, let's say that we get rid of the Oxford comma. So it's red, comma, white, and blue. So that means that it could be two things. One is red and one has white and blue in it. Do you see the confusion that it could lead to? Obviously, when people are reading or listening, probably in their heads are saying, you know, it's probably three different things, right? However, technically, if you do not use the Oxford comma, it could be seen as two things. One is red and then the other one is white and blue. So it could be white and blue stripes or something like that, right? So you can see that that can cause some confusion. So again, I would recommend in academic writing in psychology, because this is what they say, is to use the Oxford comma. Okay? Okay, now let's talk about dates and commas. So in America, we write the date, the month, the day, and then the year, right? But in other countries, they do the date for the day of the, you know, the day first, and then the month, and then the year. So things can change a little bit. So in American terms, it would be February to July, comma, 1992. Or April 6th, comma, 1969. That's probably the most common way that you see dates now, right, in America. Also, for some people, they like to also tell you what day of the week it is. So it'll be Wednesday, comma, November 14th, comma, 1990. Okay, when you are writing it in the European style, let's say, or some Latin styles or some Asian styles, the day is first, right? So there's no comma at all. So it'll be 6th April 1999. And the reason probably why is spacing wise, you can see the day is already separated by the word April, right? But in an American style, April 6th, 1969, maybe people might confuse it for 61,969 because, you know, the way that it looks. Maybe. I don't know the real reason why. However, it makes sense because the spacing can be so close that people might mistake the date, let's say. Now let's talk about semicolons. Semicolon is the dot with a comma right below it. Okay? Do not join independent clauses with a comma. So what that is saying is there's two ideas. Do not join them together with a comma. Okay? You're going to either use a semicolon or you're going to add a conjunction. So let's go ahead and let's just read what it says here. If two or more clauses grammatically complete and are not joined by a conjunction, are to form a single complete sentence. So you have two thoughts and you want to make them into one sentence because they're related, there's two ways to do it. One is with a semicolon or with a conjunction. And a conjunction is like the word and, right? It adds two things together. So let's look at some examples. Justin Bieber songs are entertaining. That's independent clause number one. Independent clause number two is they are full of engaging ideas. But as you can see, even though they're two different thoughts or two separate sentences, they relate to each other. So you can actually combine them. And you can combine them through a semicolon or a conjunction. So we can say Justin Bieber songs are entertaining, semicolon. They are full of engaging ideas. Okay? Another example is, it is nearly 6 in the evening, semicolon. We cannot get to class on time. So these things make sense as two different sentences, but we can connect them because they are related sentences. They're talking about the same idea or same topic, right? So if you want to separate them, you can, and that's totally fine as well, which is Justin Bieber songs are entertaining, period. They are full of engaging ideas, right? However, it looks better if you combine them together because they're really basically talking about the same idea or the same topic, okay? Now let's talk about conjunction. So before, we were talking about adding two independent clauses together, right, with a semicolon. Now, instead of doing that, you can also do it this way, which is adding a conjunction. Conjunctions are and, but, for, nor, or, yet, or so. So let's look at the sample. Justin Bieber songs are entertaining, comma, for they are full of engaging ideas. Okay? It is nearly 6 in the evening, comma, and we cannot get to the class on time. So this one, we added a comma and then we added a conjunction. Okay? And this is also acceptable as well. So now that we're done with that, let's go to do not use periods for commas. So don't replace a comma with a period. That's what it's saying. I met them on the bus many weeks ago, period, coming to campus for class, period. That's weird because the second section is actually not a complete sentence. So you would need to rewrite it. However, you can just add a comma because, again, they're related ideas into one sentence. So the correct way would say, I met them on the bus many weeks ago, comma, coming to campus for class. Okay? Now let's talk a little bit about subject-verb agreement. So what that is the subject part, which is the beginning part of a sentence, and then the verb, which is the action, and how they need to match up correctly. All right, when the subject of a sentence is composed of two or more nouns or pronouns connected by an, use a plural verb. So the subject has two things, and if you add them together, most likely they're more than one, right? So then you're going to need to make sure that your verb agrees with that. So example, she and her friends are at the fair. And the word are is plural, right? Is is singular, are is plural. So for this one, it's she and her friends are at the fair. So it's like a bunch of people at the fair. So it would be are. When two or more singular nouns or pronouns are connected by an or nor, use a singular verb. So before it was an and, right? Which means that you're combining everything. Or means keep them separate. So here's an example. The book or the pen is in the drawer. Okay? The book or the pen is in the drawer. So it means either the book is in the drawer or the pen is in the drawer, but not both of those two things. Because if it was combined, the book and the pen, then you would say are in the drawer because it's combining more, right? But or means one or the other, not both. All right, so now we're talking about a little bit more of a complicated sentence. When a compound subject contains both a singular and a plural noun or pronoun joined by or not, the verb should agree with the part of the subject that is near to the verb. Okay, so let's just look at this example. The boy or his friends run every day. Okay, the word run is the verb and it needs to agree with the thing that's closest because there's an or. So it's the boy, which is one person, right? Or his friends, which is a group of people. So then it needs to work well with the most closest to the verb. So that means friends, and so that means it would be run every day. But let's flip it around when it comes to the subject to see what it looks like then. His friends or the boy runs every day. So when you add a R-U-N-S, an S at the end, that's because it's a singular that's closest to it. So that is the boy, okay? But if the subject is a plural right before the verb, then you're going to correct it and make it as run, R-U-N, because R-U-N is for plural. I know it sounds a little confusing in this lecture, but you need to see it at the same time as listening to it so that you can kind of understand what's going on. Okay, let's get a little bit more complicated. Do not be misled by a phrase that comes between the subject and the verb. The verb agrees with the subject, not with a noun or pronoun in the phrase. Okay, so what it's saying is, in a sentence, it can have a bunch of things that are being involved, right? But you need to remember that the verb agrees with the subject, which is the beginning part of the sentence. So here it says one of the boxes is open, because one is a subject, and then the boxes is a description of what it is, right? It's one of these boxes, so it's a box, so we don't know which one. There might be three of them, right? So you still need to agree on the singular one. So one of the boxes is open, okay? Here's another one. The people, which is the subject, who listen to that music are few, okay? So the people is a bunch of people, then it's are. Does that make sense? The people are blah, 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 right? The people who listen to that music are few. Okay, music is singular. That's why it's saying it can be confusing for some people. They might think that it's supposed to be is, but it's not, because we're talking about the subject. All right, let's look at these three things to see if you know if they're correct or not. The team captain, comma, as well as his players, comma, is anxious. That's going to be a little complicated, right? So what is the subject, though? The subject is the team captain. The rest of it is kind of like a description that describes the rest of the situation. So for this one, it will be is anxious. The team captain is anxious, okay? Because that's really what the topic is about in the sentence. Let's look at the second one. The book, comma, including all the chapters in the first section, is boring. So again, what is the subject of this sentence? The book, which is singular. So then it is boring, okay? The last one, the woman with all the dogs walks down my street. All right, what is the subject? The subject is the woman. So the description, though, of that subject is with all the dogs, right? So the woman with all the dogs walks down my street. If you were just having the word the dogs with an S, then the singular or the verb would be W-A-L-K, no S, okay? All right, here are some more singular verbs. So these things are considered singular, as in one thing. Each one, either, because either means one or the other, right? Neither means not any of them. Everyone, everybody, anybody, nobody, somebody, someone, no one. So each of these things are considered singular. So then let's look at the statements here. Each of these hot dogs is juicy, because the subject is each. Each means one, right? So it would be is. Each of these hot dogs is juicy. Everybody knows Dr. Seuss. Again, knows with an S is because it's singular. Either is correct. Again, one or the other is basically what either means, is correct. So it's one or the other. It's not both of them. Okay? Nouns such as civics, mathematics, dollars, measles, and news, these are also considered singular. Okay? Civics, mathematics. In America, math is singular, but everywhere else in the world, math is actually considered maths with an S. It's kind of weird. So all of the world is saying that maths is with an S, but in America, we say math. So again, these are things that are, in the big picture, considered one thing. The news is on at 6. You wouldn't say the news are on at 6, right? The news is on at 6 because it's considered a one singular thing. However, dollars, depending on how you phrase that sentence, will change. $5 is a lot of money. dollars are used in America. So when you have a number in front of it, then it becomes one group or one singular item, right? $5, like a $5 bill, or it could be 5 ones, right? $5 is a lot of money. Dollars in general, just like, money, are used in America. So that's different. Okay, collective nouns. Words that imply more than one person, but that are considered singular. So team, even though it's composed of 2 or more people, it's considered one thing. Committee, same thing. A bunch of people in a committee, however, it's still considered a one thing. Class, like a classroom, a bunch of students, however, it's considered one. The class is, right? Family as well. So here are some examples. The team runs during practice. The committee decides how to proceed. The family has a long history. My family has never been able to agree. The crew is preparing to dock the ship. So these are collective nouns. Collective nouns basically meaning a group, but it's actually seen as a one type of thing, entity. Now let's talk about plural verbs. So these are words that even though it's one item, back in the olden days, somehow decided that they're made of 2 parts, so therefore then they are plural, even though it's one thing together. So that is scissors, right? 2 blades connected together. Tweezers, same thing. Trousers is just a fancy word of saying pants. And then shears is just a fancy word of saying for scissors. So those things, even though it's one item, because there's 2 parts to it, it's now seen as a plural. The scissors are dull. Those pants are made of wool. Of course, it also depends. Expressions such as with, together with, accompanied by, in addition to, as well. So here, let's look at this. Again, we have to remember subject-verb agreement, right? So we're talking about what is the subject. So when you're looking at a sentence or thinking about writing a sentence, you need to think about what is the subject of the sentence. The president, comma, accompanied by his wife, is traveling to India. Again, we know that even though his wife is with him, this sentence is talking about the president. Okay, so the president, accompanied by his wife, is traveling to India, so it would be singular. Now let's talk about the second sentence. All of the books, including yours, are in that box. So all of the books, that's a lot of books, right? So that would be plural. All of the books, including yours, are in that box.